It's World Laughter Day, but we're also talking about some stuff that's serious. Talking to Usman Ally next.
You are tuned in to Black Hollywood Lives. Breaking into.
Cockroaches in the ratchet. Hand-me-downs with the patches. Mama put a little money in the mattress.
The music's good.
Make a silver spoon out of plastic. You can either sink, swim, or be.
So what is his name so people know this at home?
Jidenna. Jidenna.
Wow, this is cool, you guys. Hello, welcome to Breaking Into here on Black Hollywood Live. I'm your host, James Lott Jr. And we're listening to some new music. I love hearing new things that are out there because not everything's played on MTV. They don't even play videos on MTV. You can follow us, of course, on YouTube and on iTunes under Breaking Into, under Black Hollywood Live. We're there. There's a Facebook page called Breaking Into. Like the page. All good stuff. My guest today, he's a talented actor of stage, screen, video games, movies, voiceover. He's in a few shows you may have heard of, like Veep, series of Misfortunate Adventures on Netflix, and a new series called Nobodies on TV Land. So he's doing all those things. He's also a playwright. We're going to talk about some of his stuff he's done with that writing. And we're going to talk about what it's like to be a man of color in this industry, because, we're here on Black Hollywood Live. We're going to talk all about it. My friend, Usman Ally.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
My head was shaved a second ago, and it grew back in like 1 week.
We could have been twinsies.
I know. In 1 week it grew back. It's like, how did my hair go back so fast?
This is an enviable problem you have.
I know. I shouldn't really complain, can I?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, okay, so you're from Swaziland?
I was born in Swaziland. Yeah, that's
wow.
correct. Yeah. I lived there for about 3 years,
okay.
And then after that, I spent the first 18 years of my life in Africa. So
wow.
I grew up in Botswana, Kenya, and Tanzania, and also spent about a year and a half in Pakistan, which is where my parents are from.
Yeah, yes.
So I went to high school in Tanzania, and then once I was done with that, I came to the States.
Was there a culture shock?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, what's important is that sometimes people ask me that question and they expect me to be like, oh, the buildings are so big and this and that. That's not the case. I mean, there's this misconception that exists that, African places in Africa are very underdeveloped and whatnot. I lived in very large cities like Nairobi and Dar es Salaam.
Oh, wow.
But the culture shock was more in terms of like, wow, the, food over here is... the portions are pretty large, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like everybody drinks ice water here,
Yes.
Things like that. Or like billboards, there's so much commercialization, that's just everywhere you look. So those are the things that sort of took me a while. I also, when I came from Tanzania, I moved to Portland, Oregon.
Okay,
so that was
a
bit of a culture shock in another way, where it was just very homogenous. Lovely people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love Portland.
Super liberal place, but just very homogenous, very white. So that was a bit of a surprise to me.
I'm glad you said that. That's actually what I meant by not, because I know people go straight to like, it must be, did you eat dirt for breakfast?
Right.
Africa, there's very much development.
That's
and right. Is it Nigeria that has the third largest or fourth largest movie capital?
Nollywood, I think.
Yes.
Or, I think that's what it's called. Or Lolly, maybe it's in Lagos or.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, massive.
So people understand it's like there's some stuff going on over there. It's big, and that's what I meant. It's just like it must be different because our attitudes are different.
Yeah.
How was it for you? Because you're Pakistani.
Yeah, my parents are, and that's my ethnicity, right?
But you're African too, I guess.
I am. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I am an African American.
Yeah,
I'm a U.S. citizen,
that.
And I'm born in Africa and spent my entire life there.
So my question to you is the attitudes of when you ran across maybe militant Black Americans who are trying to be African. How did that initially hit you? Maybe.
I thought it was a noble thing for them to feel like they wanted to reconnect with their background or wherever they might be from. But sometimes it was a little vague, because there's a lack of sort of actual education into looking into where you are actually from and what it's like over there. And there was a very interesting relationship between, Black Africans from Africa and Black African Americans. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still a level of, you're still an American at the end of the day to a lot of African people, So it was interesting. I mean, I've experienced quite a lot of different sorts of people over here, and they're either misconceptions or preconceived notions of what Africa is like. You know?
What do they say when they see you most of the time? What are some of the reactions they think you are?
People think I'm Arab more than anything else.
That,
do you know what I mean? And often, and it's, interestingly, I came to this country a year before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
It was a different time then.
I'm sure, yes.
And then right after 9/11, things changed quite dramatically. So there was almost this I would even say I was, before 9/11, I was almost invisible to people. Like I was just like this minority that didn't really exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know much about me. Some people thought I might be Indian. Some people,
Okay.
do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And Indian makes sense because Pakistan is pretty much India, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But it's but then after 9/11, it became like this. That was, I always say to people that 9/11 is like the birth moment of what my ethnicity is to white people. Like that's what we were born out of. Do you know
interesting.
What I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah.
And that's how we were sort of perceived in television and film too. Do you know what I mean? For so long, for example, black African Americans, you know, slavery is like the defining beginning moment, you know, the birth narrative, quote unquote. And so much what we see in the media was black people being portrayed as slaves, and that's sort of that journey. And so for us, it's almost like 9/11 and this terrorist attack is this moment where we become part of the consciousness of the United States, and people have this, you know, this idea that's completely, you know, miseducated, I would say, about who we are. And that's why initially those first, well, even right now, you know, how we're shown on television is either as like terrorists or those sorts of things.
And we're going to talk about some of your work, because you do talk about throughout your work. This is an interesting chain of thought. So you're basically kind of invisible, because in America it's usually like black, white, Latino, Asian. That's it.
Yeah.
But then after 9/11, it's heightened, obviously. And anybody who looks like none of those four people, then you must be a terrorist and a Muslim.
Yeah.
So then coming into this business. So when did you come into this? Did you come in right after that, or I mean, was there some time period between then?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I kind of always knew that I was going to be an actor. I mean, or in the arts in some way. I always was interested in doing like educational outreach through the arts. That was my whole thing, and that's kind of what took me to Chicago, which is we can talk about.
Yeah.
But I think I always wanted to be in the theater. I wasn't necessarily interested in television and film initially. You know
How funny.
I mean? And so in the theater, there were more opportunities also to play things that weren't about, you know, the political climate that we existed in necessarily, where brown is bad. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I was, and I was doing that for a long time. I think now as the years are passing along and more people of color are at the table, do you know what I mean? Like at the writing table, at the producing level, things are changing, narratives are changing. You know, social media is allowing people is empowering people to also have an opinion of what they see if they don't like something in terms of how it's being whitewashed or whatnot. So things are changing, but certainly when I started about 17 years ago, it was different. You know.
Yeah, because it must be hard for someone. I mean, for someone who's not, and in this country especially, who's not black or white.
Right.
Because I mean, after that, everybody else is. I mean, it's hard for blacks too, but I mean, I think we have it a little easier than Asian or South Asian or Samoan. I mean, like there's this whole area that no one like talks about. Like they're after.
Yeah.
And you have to fight against that kind of beginning, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, you know, it's always been interesting. Like certain theaters, for example, they'll do this thing where they want to diversify their programming, so they have like a play where they collaborate with an African American theater company or a Latino theater company, and then we're like, so what about us?
Right.
Where we don't fit into those narratives or those stories.
Right.
You know,
you have stories to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, it's constantly a battle for more representation. You know, accurate representation, and that battle continues and will continue for a long time. I do think progress is being made. It's incremental sometimes, you know, but it's happening.
Well, I mean, you get people like Priyanka Chopra, who's lead of a network TV show. Right. That doesn't happen very often. Yeah. Even though we've seen a lot of South Asian and Indian people kind of spread around on shows now.
Sure, yeah.
For a while, there was like all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's the person now, and that's a South Asian all of a sudden. Yeah. And then for a while it's like, oh, now all of a sudden it's a Korean. You know, there's always things that you kind of go through these things. It's kind of cyclical. Weird things.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I just worked on a show for YouTube Red. They're doing their own like subscription series.
Yeah, they're doing their own programming. It's
called Lifeline. It's just this sci-fi thing, and we shot about 10 episodes. But on set, there was me, and then there was another South Asian actor, Sankrish Bala.
Together? Oh my God.
There was two of us.
Oh my God.
Like, whoa. Like, this is weird, you know? We didn't go for the same role. We're playing two very different roles. We're both like major roles on this television show, and there's two of us. And there's no commentary. It wasn't that the story, you know, sometimes a narrative is telling you that, well, we need two of them because the story is about either how they conflict with each other or they're doing something. No, we were two separate storylines, but in the same show. So, that's amazing. Incremental progress is happening, right?
Let's show the first clip. Oh, we've had 5 minutes left. Just kidding. I need something. Like, we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually, that was a good conversation so far. So let's show this. This is what I want. This is what I want. This is actually leads right into that a little bit. This is from 2009.
Yeah.
America's ready for the first organic, non-hydrogenated soy, partially sun-dried, distilled natural spring alloy alternative green.
Polycultural, polyamorous,
The first multi-tried by mono-minded for the first.
Vegan friendly, pro-life, all choice.
All satellite 24-hour digital to finally run this nation like an assembly line. Is America strong enough, mature enough? Has it healed? Has it lived in a grass hut? Has it been in the Peace Corps?
Announced its upbringing and grown a longer beard.
Has it sang loud enough for the judges? Has it completed the physical requirements?
Can it walk the runway?
Can it lose the weight? Is it ready for the first self-propelled?
Self-medicated.
Self-aware.
Self-loathing, can it handle the impact of a full-fledged, wavering, moderate neutralist with right-wing tendencies and a sympathy for 1960s beach films? Is it ready? I say that America couldn't be more ready. It's a UFO sighting, Miley Cyrus obsessed, fried bucket of chicken, P.T. Barnum and Bailey circus. Would elect a donut if it promised cheaper gas.
Hip hop lock.
Slash burn,
Cut, run.
turn the other cheek, bite off the nose, and disco ball non-stop.
I love that. And that's 8
so
years
funny.
ago.
Wow.
Like literally this March. So we're in
Yeah.
May. That's 8 years ago.
Oh my God.
When you look at that, what did first things come to mind?
Oh, wow.
You were smiling and stuff. So at least you're smiling. You're smiling. Everybody was smiling.
Yeah, first of all, I had the chance when I did that to work with two incredible slam poets, and Idris Goodwin and Kelly Zenyitsai, Kelly's in New York, Idris is now, I think, in New Mexico,
Okay.
like working as a professor, and a playwright as well. But just working on that and seeing that now, I'm like, wow. I would be interested to see what we would come up with in this day and age,
Today, yeah.
because that was very much, we wrote that piece and a few other pieces together. We had the show called American Ethnic in Chicago, sort of dealing with the idea of ethnicity and lack of representation
Yes,
on television,
yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes.
It's interesting that 8 years later, I'm still having this conversation. with
Okay.
you, of
What a
course, right?
shame, right?
But I see that now, and I just wonder how we would change that up with, living in Trump's America.
I'd be curious too.
Yeah.
It's funny 'cause I do spoken word, and I just released my first book of poetry. It's on Amazon.
Cool.
I was a very thank you. I had to be very vulnerable to put it on Amazon and like sell the book. It was very interesting. It's been some nice response to it. But I love that form of expression.
Yeah.
I go to the New Rican Poet Society in New York. I love that place,
Yeah.
and I'm part Puerto Rican and everything, so I love the whole thing. And I just love how you really can get a lot across.
Yeah.
And then we could and in one like slam, you can make somebody laugh, cry, chortle, get serious, get quiet. I mean, like I was laughing, I was looking, I was like,
Right.
Plus visually looking at the three of you visually was very interesting.
Right. How interesting, right? To see an African American man, an Asian American woman, and myself as well in there, all together.
Yeah.
I mean, slam poetry for me, when I started, I started doing that in college, and I was working with a hip hop theater collective in Portland, Oregon. Then I went to grad school in Florida, actually, and over there I started up a hip hop collective as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and we used to sort of, collaborate on works in terms of creating lyrics that sort of dealt with the issues that we were seeing as young people of color around us. And I find that sort of work to be incredibly fulfilling for young artists. For me, it gave me a voice, and in some ways, saved me from a lot of things. Myself, from it just allowed me to have an avenue where I could express myself pretty succinctly too. Because that's the thing. Slam poetry can be expansive, but you get a lot across in and maybe like a rhyming couplet. It's Shakespearean in that way as well, because you're getting so much in there, and people are responding to it so differently. But I haven't done that in a while. I used to perform at the Green Mill in Chicago, which is a fantastic sort of, some people say, the birth of the deaf poetry movement, the slam poetry movement.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chicago's a great town for that sort of thing, and that's where we did that, American Ethnic.
I just, for me, it saved me also because I'm a painter, and that's one form that helps bring stuff out. But for some reason, writing something down, and choosing how I want to say it,
right.
I think some parts, like I'm writing it down, I'm angry. I can say it angrily.
Yeah. And your audience will embrace that. Do you know what I mean? That it's great because it's so freeing, right? It allows you to sort of express yourself without necessarily the judgment. I mean, people will maybe have their opinions, certainly, but it's you know what it is? The word for me is it was empowering.
Yes.
I needed that at a point in my life, particularly when I felt like I was being marginalized over here, that I needed a way to speak out without harming myself or harming someone. Do you know what I mean?
You just said it, took words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Because that was for me too. Because there was a time in this business where I just kind of felt like I hit a plateau.
Yeah.
And maybe you can speak about this. You hit a plateau, and you're like, they're seeing me just as this black guy.
Mm-hmm.
Or for me, this old guy.
Right.
And like, I'm not going to shave my goatee off. I'm keeping it gray. I'm not going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to stick with that conviction. But then anger does come in when certain jobs don't come to you.
Right,
Or,
yeah.
or sometimes in Hollywood, they're very blunt. Sorry, you're not black enough, or you're too
yeah.
black, or they'll say things to you.
God, yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that stuff like that
Yes.
too. And you have to develop a thick skin, of course. But sometimes it does get to you. And
Absolutely.
I found that writing it down and getting it out and performing it out and just getting it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't let that stuff fester, you know.
Yes.
I remember I did a short piece on like how there's no, for example, South Asian doctors on any of the doctor shows on TV. Do you know what I mean? Like on Grey's Anatomy or on now the Chicago Med. There's like not a single one. And in the real world, you know, the vast majority of your doctors are probably going to be South Asian.
Mine are, so
So you can either let that shit. Excuse me.
That's fine. Hey, that's fine. We're talking real. That's
Okay,
fine.
yeah, you can either let that fester,
Yeah.
or you can let it out and in a creative form. And that's what it was for me, was allowing myself to sort of get it out, you know, just put it out there.
So let me ask you. So, so as you're now, you have a manager and you have people and they work for you. And everything. So how are you these last couple of years? Because you said we have a new America these days.
Right.
How's that affected you and your representation and trying to navigate your way? Because you're on a few shows right now. We'll talk about each show and all that kind of stuff. But just in general, how's that affecting your movement in this business?
You know what? I was smart enough, I suppose, early in my career to make it clear to my representatives what I would do on television and film and what I wouldn't.
Okay, good.
And for me, having that clear line of conversation with them was really important. You know, my agent is like a small Chicago boutique agent, even today, even out here in LA. And oftentimes people are surprised by that. But it's essential for me to have a line of communication with them where they know that I'm a theater actor who's trained, who isn't interested in playing the guy underneath the bus who plants the bomb and blows up a bunch of school kids. And I say that as an example because those are things that are often put towards us.
Yeah.
So establishing that early on for me, yes, did I lose jobs and was I broke for a while? Absolutely. And I don't ever judge anyone who takes those roles because people's personal lives sometimes dictate that we have to.
Yes,
you know, I did an episode of a television show once where I did play one of those kinds of roles, and I regretted it instantly, but at that time I needed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't judge it, but I think it's important to know yourself, know what you're willing to do, and realize that at the end of the day, if you don't take this one, something else will come.
Yeah.
Something else will always come. You just have to wait to find it and be proactive and ready to take it when it does. Do you know what I mean?
I like that. That's true. So we're not no judgment to anybody who does the things that we don't want to do. Like I said, everybody has their own lines they draw in the sand. I just for you, like I said, for me, it's just figuring out because you have this conviction of certain things you don't want to do. You have to navigate this business a certain way. Then
absolutely.
Obviously.
And again, I just have to stress sometimes it's not important about. You know, there's people like, well, you should be with a really big agency. And I'm like, well, those guys might completely lose track of me. You know, they might be like, well, why don't you want to do this? I don't want to have to go through those conversations again that I've had where it's like, you know, these are the reasons why I am the way I am and what I'm willing to do. So it's important to establish that very early on, I think.
And I want to say out loud to people, small business, there's nothing wrong with small business. I'll say to every camera. So boutique anything is not always bad. Everybody goes to big, like you said, you get lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That means your people are working for you, I'm sure.
They're working very hard.
Right.
And, you know, and people are, again, very surprised that they're like, so your reps are based out of Chicago? I'm like, well, they have an office in LA, but really they're a Chicago agency, and they do very well for me.
Well, nowadays, I feel like with technology and phones and tablets, I mean, you don't really have to be in LA or New York.
That's
I
right,
think you can nowadays.
Yeah, I think
work around it on some level.
Yeah, I think you could certainly, particularly in the beginning, like when I was doing a lot of theater in Chicago, I would do some television too, and it would be out of Chicago or New York, and you know, and I steadily built up a resume of credits, and then when the time felt right, when I had certain momentum, then I came out to Los Angeles, you know, and so that worked for me. That way.
And I think that's totally fine. Speaking of one of the roles that you do have reoccur on, let's show the picture. Of course, this is the first one that does this. Is the cheap pick. Yeah, that one. On Veep.
That's right.
Okay, first of all, that show is one of the funniest, about World Laughter Day. It'll be on tonight, one of the funniest shows on television. the dialogue. I just want to ask. I've interviewed several people from Veepon. I want to know about the dialogue. It's so you have to listen to it when you watch the show. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's quick. There's like pop culture references in there. It's vulgar in some way. I mean, like. Your character's fun. That's how I first noticed you was on there, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I was in season 5 and a couple of episodes, and it was a quick introduction of who I am. And I come back now in season 6, which just started airing, and it's a really nice character arc that they've given me for like a few episodes. So I'm really excited for people to see that. It'll start. My episode starts, I think, May 21st.
Okay,
so
coming up this month.
So it's really great. But working on that show, I mean, it was a funny thing. I was a big fan of the show for the longest time. I loved it. I have a couple of friends who were like, "Oh my God, it's the best comedy on TV. It's the
everybody's
best show.
good
It's the
on
best
it.
show.
Everyone's
great." And so I just had put it into my agent's ear one day. I was like, "Look, I gotta get on this show. I'll do anything on this, whatever small role."
Yes.
And it turned out to be that I was, I got on the show, I got to work with them, and again, these past few months I've been working with them, and it is a fantastic environment because everyone on the show is incredibly smart. Do you know what I mean?
Ooh, yeah.
The writers are very, very smart. The showrunner, Dave Mandel, is like top notch. He's constantly like, and the thing is, they all work really hard.
I believe it.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus she's obviously an icon, but at the same time, she'll shoot a scene with you, and then she'll run straight to the cameras and watch the playback, and then she'll have notes for the writers, she'll have notes for the producers, she'll have notes for the scene, and then she comes back and does the scene again. She's very collaborative, which is the other thing. They're all about like input. One of the really great things about that show is it's the first time I worked on a show where they almost tell you that, hey, you should overlap. Like, we should talk over each other.
They do.
Absolutely.
All the time, yes.
They shoot it in such a way where they're not that concerned about, like, losing your audio or something. So they're like, just her thing that she always says is, hey, we got to zhuzh this up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And so that we get in there and try to make it more natural. So it's less TV talky. Do you know what I mean?
I totally get it. I agree, yes.
She's fantastic. So working on that was a dream come true for me. And I'm really excited about this season.
Do you, because I only imagine, do you guys have a hard time keeping a straight face sometimes when you were doing your scenes?
I did not have such a hard time because I was so focused. I was like, I can't mess this up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm intimidated at first. I mean, working with her, she's so good, and even if you're confident about your abilities, which I am, I was still like, this is fucking cool. You know what I mean? So
no, I get it.
Yeah, I certainly. But everyone on that show, and what they do is typically they will do the scene once, then they'll say, okay, let's make these adjustments, and then they'll give you alt lines, which is like, hey, this time when you're in the middle of that monologue, throw this joke in there. Do you know what I mean?
God.
And there were some times where I remember one night we were shooting and they said, hey, by the way, we have that big scene coming up, so we have to rewrite it. And I was like, okay. And then we sat at the table with the writers, and we sort of like figured out how to write the scene. It turned out very different than what it originally was. And then they're like, okay, let's quickly run it and then shoot it.
So you have to learn it like right on the fly.
Yeah, on the fly. So, and it's surprising when you're under that kind of pressure, your brain just clicks into gear and you can get it down. You know? The next day, I remember I had an audition for something, and they'd give me the lines like an hour before, and I couldn't get them done because I didn't care as much. I was like, oh, yeah, this is too soon. But on set, it was like that moment, and I got them because it's just, you're that invested, and everyone is like, it's like an organism. Everyone's working together towards the same thing. It was a fantastic show to watch.
I get that feeling from it. I do. Just from what you guys on HBO, it's on Sunday. It's so just the dialogue is just so good. And it's just so nasty sometimes.
So nasty. I mean, and everyone, it's all fair game, right?
It sure is.
They will make fun of everybody and anyone, right?
They do.
It doesn't matter, like black, brown,
gay, straight,
male,
whatever,
female, gay,
tall,
straight,
short. They make fun of everybody.
Everyone.
And it's so, but it's one of those shows that I sit down. I was called like one of the thinking man's show. I just sit down and I want to hear all the dialogue. And there's some sight gags in there too, a little bit, but it's mostly, and it's funny because it's a very conversational show.
Yeah, sure.
And
it moves fast.
It moves fast.
Yeah.
But every single person, and I was laughing because I met Matt Walsh. And of course he started UCB here. And he's good. But he's the one who's just, they're so good.
I know, Matt's really good as well. He's fucking hilarious.
Oh my God, he's so hilarious. They're all good. I mean, Tony Hale, everybody's just so good. Matthew Robertson, everybody's just so good on that show. And you were really good on it too.
Thank you.
Another show that you do. We're gonna show part of this clip. I can't remember how long it is. I think I set it up where it should be. Yes. Right. So let's show this. We're gonna talk about this. This is another interesting show.
Yep.
She can tell you everything you need to know.
Do you live with our Aunt Josephine?
I am your Aunt Josephine.
Good morning. I am Stefano.
It's afternoon. Enter Count Olaf.
The only reason why Count Olaf hasn't torn you limb from limb is because he hasn't gotten a hold of your fortune.
You will never get away with this.
The fortune will be mine.
Carpe diem.
Seize the children.
Seize the day.
I said nay.
Another major release. Obviously,
Yeah.
when this came out, it was just like it's on Netflix, and you can see it, and you can stream the whole thing, and you're in that. Another major, Neil Patrick Harris, of course,
Yes,
playing
yeah.
Olaf, and of course, it was books, and it was also so it had its own following. How has that experience been for you?
Crazy. I mean, it's
With no hand. With the
yeah, I got the
hook.
hooks on my hands, and
Yes.
I've gotten quite good with those actually.
Really?
I can do quite a lot of things. Yeah. It's a great show,
Yeah.
and I was excited to be a part of it just because I knew it had this huge following, and they were kind of like lining it up with all these really big, producing names like Barry Sonnenfeld is our
Yes,
showrunner, and,
yes.
So, and Neil, of course, is fantastic. But yeah, really good. We're in our second season now.
know.
I'm actually flying back up to Vancouver tonight to continue the second
good,
season.
very
We've got,
good.
I think, a 10-episode season coming
Good.
up. So it's good. And the fans has been like a trip. Do you know what I
I'm
mean?
sure. I'm
They-
sure.
They are so into it.
Is this your first project where you have these cultish fans? I guess for you,
Yeah, I think so.
like really, like the
Particularly where a project where there's a cult following and I have a relatively large role.
Yeah.
I've done I was in like a very small role in like one of the Star Trek films, and even that is like people are like, oh my god, I gotta get your
I'm
autograph.
sure. No, I'm sure.
At conventions and things.
Yeah.
But with this show, they're just, I think people have this nostalgic connection to it. All these people who are in their 20s right now who grew up reading the books,
Yes.
and then their kids reading it right now
Yes.
too. Families reading it together. And it's great because it's very dark in some ways,
is.
so adults can kind of get into
Yeah.
it as well. And then it's still light enough where you can watch it with your kids too. It's been a really, really good experience. And
Now,
shooting-
tell me who you play, just in case you've never seen it. Who you play? In
Oh
the-
yeah, so I'm the hook-handed man, who's also called Fernald. That's
Yes.
his real name, but he's just known as Hooky, kind of.
Yes.
He's one of Count Olaf, played by Neil Patrick Harris, one of Count Olaf's henchmen.
Yes.
And so Count Olaf is constantly trying to get his hands on these orphans who
Yes.
have been given to him initially, wrongly given to him for safekeeping, but he wants to basically kill them so
Yeah.
he can get their fortune. They've been left this money, and there's a variety of side stories. And
Yeah.
my character, for some reason, has this weird way of like communicating with the baby, who's like an infant toddler, right? Somehow understands what the baby's saying.
Yes.
It's kooky, crazy,
Yeah.
off the wall, but fantastic. And I'm really pleased that we have some diversity on our show as well. There's myself, there's
Alfre Woodard.
Alfre Woodard is fantastic. Asif Mandvi from Daily Show.
Yes,
fame.
I saw he was. I was like, oh my god, I
Yeah.
love him too. Yes.
Yeah, he was in a couple of episodes playing a great role. And then K. Todd Freeman, who's a Chicago-based, well, actually New York now, theater actor and
Yeah.
also done television film, has a great role of Mr. Poe, who's
Yeah.
a fantastic banker role. And he, so there's us there playing those roles, adding a bit of color to it as well. And, going back to that whole conversation about representation, it's happening slowly.
It must be interesting because that's a binge one. That one's already done once.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're used to doing episodic TV where
Yeah.
it's like it comes out next week.
Sure,
comes out next
right,
week.
yeah.
This one, it's all out at once.
I know. I was just talking to somebody about how different that is, because when the show was about to come out, there was all this hype. Then when it came out, it blew up, and it was this
It did.
massive thing in January where everybody
Yes.
was watching it. And then once January ended, it was like, hey, so what was the name of that show? You know what I mean? Like, you're like, how do you maintain people's interest on a
Yes.
show when they binge watch it all?
Right.
I don't know what Netflix's formula is for that. I mean, they
They're working
release
it.
so much
Yes.
content.
Because like for me, I'm into Stranger Things, and that comes back
Yeah.
in October. So I'm like, it does work on some level. I mean, it's like Kimmy Schmidt and Grayson Franklin.
Yeah.
They really are reinventing how we watch television.
Yeah, although I think now some of the streaming channels like Hulu, for example, they've created their own content.
Yes.
I think that what they're doing is releasing maybe 2 at a time.
Yes.
Or something, right? Isn't The Handmaid's Tale or one
Yes,
of them? was
yes,
some-
exactly. So you're doing like a few at a time. You just keep it going. But it's funny. It's still, again, you don't have to wait the next week for the next
Yeah.
episode nowadays.
Yeah.
It's a very. I mean, I remember when it first started. I was thinking it's not going to work. You guys are crazy. But now it's like, no. Now this is great. You can sit down and watch whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
If you want to finish it all in one weekend, then I guess you finish it all in one weekend. But there's like,
Yeah, I know so many people are like, so I watched your show today. I'm like, what do you mean? Like the first episode? They're like, no, all 8 episodes. I'm like, 8 episodes? They're like over an hour long each.
Yes.
So that's over 8 hours of your life.
yes,
You put it.
yes, it is.
So that's that means I mean something to them, I suppose, if they're gonna
Yes.
spend 8 hours. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yes, I love that. And what is one thing you can tell us about Neil Patrick Harris that we might be, because there's a lot said about him, but what's going to be really interesting that we just maybe that you can share that you would be surprised by, you think, that you worked with them?
You know what's maybe not surprising, but I was pleased to see is that Neil is incredibly dedicated to the craft of acting. Not necessarily, sometimes people see him and they think because he hosts all these award shows that he's very like polished in showbiz, but he really gets down to like the core of a character. Even especially Count Olaf is a character that keeps changing. He has a lot of disguises that he plays different roles throughout the episodes. Every time he puts on a different disguise, he really takes his time to sort of get into it, and it's very rare on a television show where you see an actor warming up, for like we're on the stage. You know? So I would see him doing like vocal warm-ups and physical warm-ups, and I'm like, oh, that's normal to me because I've done a lot of theater, but I don't ever see an actor doing that on set, especially somebody who's like number one on the show, But he's always like.
I think he's very theater too, I guess.
Yeah,
also.
He is incredibly, and you see that come across, and how he's been able to like straddle both worlds almost as a performer on screen and also on stage. Really, really dedicated to what he's doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are the hooks? Like when they said you're gonna have hooks for hands,
Right,
I mean, like you have to wear them all day long while you're. Like you take it off and like go to the bathroom and like how does that work?
I get breaks, but they're good, man. I can't give away the magic of them or how they work, but I put them on. I work with them as much as I can, and they took a while to get used to because they're a little heavy actually.
Oh, they heavy? Oh, really?
They have some weight to them, and they are. I mean, it's metal at the end that I'm sort of working with, but they're good, and we've got a really great team up there that sort of created all these things for us as well. I get a lot of breaks though. As soon as we cut a scene, I'm like, hooks, de-hooking. They're like, de-hooking. You always hear the ADs, right? All right, time to hook Usman up, and then like, all right, de-hook, like we're hearing all the walkie-talkies, copy, de-hooking.
I love it. A major de-hooking. Yeah, I like that. Now let's show the next picture. And this is from the set of Nobodies. Now, it's not you guys. He's tall in real life. I didn't realize how he's taller than me, and I'm 6 feet tall. And I look at that picture and I go, wait a minute, you are taller than everybody else.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about Nobodies. Is produced by Melissa McCarthy and her man, Ben Falcone. And so and that's on TV Land. And so how did you get involved with that project?
I just auditioned. I mean, it was one of those situations where they held an audition, and I went in. And what was crazy about the audition was they were lines. Okay. But I was like, you know what? They are improv people. I can improv, so we're just going to improvise.
Yes.
So when I went in there and playing, I play this network studio executive who's kind of larger than life, thinks very much of himself and whatnot, and we improvised a scene where they're pitching their show to me.
Yes.
And I just started like riffing into them, like about all kinds of things. I was like, so how come there's no people of color in your show, or and I brought in race and all, and the whole time I could hear Melissa in the background like watching the scene and cracking up forever. And what was supposed to be like a 2 or 3 minute audition became like a 10 to 15 minute audition.
Wow.
So it felt really great.
Yes.
Of course, when you leave an audition, you never know.
No, you never know.
You're like, okay. I mean, I've been in somewhere. I'm like, that was amazing.
Right, and nothing.
Crickets. You know what I mean? So. So it was good. It worked out, and they called and they hired me. And what was really great is that a friend of mine, Tawny Newsome, she plays the role of Grace, who is kind of like my cohort.
Yes.
And she went and auditioned right after me.
Oh, wow.
And we know each other from Chicago theater. And so now we're working together on this show as well on TV.
Yes,
that's always really nice.
Yeah, really nice.
And much like Veep, Nobodies and Veep, they both have this huge Chicago contingent, of actors. Like you mentioned Matt Walsh, and he's from Chicago, and Kevin Dunn's from Chicago.
I love Kevin
Julia's
Dunn.
from Chicago, went to Northwestern. Gary Cole, those are all the Veep people.
Yes, they're all so good.
And then on Nobodies, Melissa McCarthy.
Yes.
Like I think she went to Northwestern, but I know she's from Chicago or spent some time there too. And then Tawny and myself. So it's interesting. A lot of these comedy shows have that sort of Chicago element.
What's interesting,
I'm very proud of.
You're bringing up, it's funny because we all think New York and LA.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you may think Atlanta because Atlanta's a major hub now for stuff. But Chicago really has always had a large amount of people coming out of there that permeate the comedians, writers, producers, actors. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think Chicago, first of all, has a great improv scene, right?
Okay.
So they've got Second City and
Yes.
Improv Olympic that all started in Chicago. So they have that going for them. And a lot of comedy writers and whatnot end up going to SNL and stuff like that
that's
from
true.
Chicago. And that's been historically the case.
Yeah.
But also the great thing about Chicago is that there's a fantastic theater community out there that exists where really good new plays are being developed all the time, workshopped right from like the beginning. You know, I had a
Wow.
couple of plays that I did that, you know, one of them was called Disgraced that ended up winning a Pulitzer Prize. I was in another one that we started in Chicago called The Elaborate Entrance of Deity. There was a Pulitzer finalist when we took it to New York. So there's almost like this incubator sort of environment over there. And as actors, because some of the houses are so small and intimate, and there's so much, importance put on being a good professional. You can't, like in LA, you do a play, and if something else comes up, people are like, peace, I'm out of here. You can't do that in Chicago. Once you're committed to a show, you're committed to that
Yes.
show. They
Yes.
don't care if there's something else comes up. You know, they
Yeah.
contractually write you in.
Right.
So there's this thriving scene where actors learn how to be working actors. You know, in New York, oftentimes, I have some really talented friends who are out there, and they keep trying to get gigs, but it's a bigger pool, so they're not,
Yes.
you know, you become a professional auditioner, do you know what I mean,
That's-
as opposed to
yes.
professional
Yes.
working actor. And in
Yeah.
places like Chicago, the scene is big enough where you'll be noticed nationally if the show does well, and it's small enough where you still have there are opportunities available to you because you're not playing against so many more people. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a lot there. I mean, Tracy Letts is a fantastic.
Yes.
You know, he came out of Chicago. The whole
Yes.
Steppenwolf scene. So
Oh, yes.
it's a good place, and I often say that a lot of my success that I'm having right now is directly linked to my experiences in that city as an actor.
And also apparently linked in terms of who you're working with these days. Just happening. It's all the same base. One of the things I want to bring up is that you're an Obie Award winner.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And congratulations on that. And that's
Thank you.
and that was for something that was very personal to you, wasn't it? It was The Invisible Hand. You played
The Invisible
terrorist.
Hand. Yeah, I played. So Ayad Akhtar is this playwright who wrote Disgraced, and he also wrote The Invisible Hand, and he's a fantastic Pakistani-American writer. And so he wrote this story about a banker who goes to Pakistan, gets kidnapped by this organization who see themselves as revolutionaries, freedom fighters. They don't define themselves as terrorists, or,
Right.
you know. But they end up kidnapping the wrong guy. They kidnap
my
the
God.
lower, you know, not as high level
Yeah.
sort of bank guy as they thought. And so what happens is my character is this British Pakistani kid with a very thick English accent, right?
Oh, that's-
And he comes in and he's disillusioned with being a minority in the UK and feeling like he's picked on by the police, picked on, you know, just being brown.
Which happens in the UK also, folks. Yes, it
Absolutely,
does.
you know,
Yes,
so
it
he
does.
goes to Pakistan looking to be inspired by something. So he joins this
funny.
organization. They kidnap this guy. And then this guy says, well, look, I don't have $25 million, but I can learn how to work the stock. I can teach you how to take advantage of the stock market so that you can earn my ransom. You know,
Wow.
and basically it's a great, you know, sort of symbolism of how the West has sort of taught people, you know, to take advantage of capitalism.
Yes.
And, you know, so that in a way that all the things that we think are bad about the other, those are all things that we've actually, as Americans, as Westerners, have put on them, you know. So it's a really fantastic play. I got to play this great role opposite Justin Kirk from Weeds.
Oh, yes.
fame.
He's a great actor.
Yeah, so the two of us really ripped it up every night on that stage in New York, and it led to me receiving an Obie Award, which was
Okay, first of all, how
huge
does that
honor.
even feel? I mean, to win an award. I mean, because
Yeah.
you're not in it for the awards, you're in it to act. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's great to feel. You know what it is? It's you suddenly feel validated. That some
Okay.
of your work is being appreciated by people that you respect. You know, the Village Voice does the Obie Awards, and
right.
and it's an award that is not steeped in glamour. It's steeped in like respectability. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I do.
people who get it are oftentimes people who are working very hard and creating something that's meaningful. You know, I mean, that could be said about any award, I suppose.
I
but-
know, but you know.
but you know, for me, it was one of the most important ones. You know, that award season, I was nominated for a few others, the Lortels and the Drama Leagues, which are also
No,
fantastic.
those are right.
Fantastic awards. But to win an Obie was meaningful in a way that, you know, it's hard to put into words.
It's very, for me, it's very New York. It's
Yeah.
very New York theater because, I mean, it's off Broadway, but it's still Broadway, so to speak. So it's
Yeah.
like, to me, that's one of the top ones you could get.
Yeah, it
in
certainly was
that-
for me.
Yeah, in that field.
Yeah, I mean, it meant a lot to me. And again, just being there that night and when they presented the award and going up on the stage and, you know, giving me the opportunity to address my peers and also the press and tell them how important it is that these stories of people of color are being told regardless. And, you know, that character for me, what was great was I was able to get that audience to see this guy's perspective. You know what I mean? That what he's doing is logical, even though you might not agree with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like his beliefs are from some sort of experience, you know?
Yeah.
And getting them on my side. By the end of the show, I used to have people, you know, white people come up to me and be like, I was rooting for you, even though I knew I shouldn't be, but I was rooting for you, you know? So that's
gratifying.
incredibly gratifying, yeah.
I mean, because I feel I get the sense from you, and almost like what I try to do, and all the things that I do, I'm always very conscious. I'm a conscious performer. I'm a conscious person. I always try to infuse some kind of my truth out in the world. It's like you're the same way, kind of. You're very much about in some form. You try to work it in there.
I think it's important for me, whatever sort of character I play, that they are built from a place of real honesty and logic. You know, again, because of maybe the way I look, you know, tall, dark, bald head, kind of severe looking to some people, you know. I get to play these characters who are antagonists oftentimes, you know. And I think it's important to give them a bit of myself, these characters, but also to just make sure that people can see that there's logic and that somebody who's different than you also has a reason for doing the things that they do, you know. And you may not agree with it, but as long as you understand it, that's what's important, you know. Yeah,
that's true. Now, you also wrote something. Well, you wrote a bunch of things, but one of the things you wrote, of course, was based on a true story.
Oh, yeah.
So it's my research. But I find it was for Sketchbook. I found it very interesting. So tell us a little about that.
Oh, gosh. So let me see now. I've written a few.
I'll make you go back in that one. I'll make you go back a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It was based on a conversation I had with someone, like a Facebook argument.
Yes,
you know,
that's what you said it was.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And where we were talking about mascots and like school mascots. And I guess it was some town in California that had like the angry Arabs or something like that, and none of the people who went to that school were Arab, but they had like this like over the top like guy with a turban and angry eyes and a sword, and there was another school that had like the Indians or something, but it was like you know, this weird sort of mishmash of like Aladdin. Anyway, so I decided to just write this piece about like people confronting each other about this issue, you know, about American sports and allowing. This was also the time when the whole Redskins issue was coming up as well.
Oh yes.
So, you know, just a lot of my writing with that story and a few others is about like perception, right, and how people are perceived based on their ethnicity, and how you sort of challenge that, you know, and how you can sort of at least make your audience think about it. I'm not interested in making anyone change their minds, but if you're thinking about it,
that's good enough.
That's good enough for me, yeah.
I like that. That's good enough. We're going to show also something, because it's talking about his diversity. Let's show this Eve Ensler clip a while back.
Right, so I watch people walking down the street and I'd be like, in her vagina, not in her vagina, in her, like Tina Turner, implanted, illuminated, transcendent, right? Oh my God! And you know, you can actually track her career, and you can see where she literally like lands in her vagina, right? I mean, she was always in her vagina when she was in her younger years, but when she really landed in her vagina when she was in her 50s, you know, with What's Love Got to Do with It after she left Ike, and it was just like, oh my God! And I would sit in the third row of all of her concerts so that I could sort of just, you know, sort of like just, you know, osmose her living in her vagina into me, you know? Because that is what it looks like. That is what it truly feels like if you are fully incarnated in your body.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
I know. I seriously, when I watched it, I was like, I watched it like 3 times. I love that because I took away stuff. I was like, oh my God, Tina Turner wasn't in her vagina in her 50s. Like, she was like into herself. Like, she was fully. I get what the point is coming across. Even as, of course, you guys' vagina monologues. It's just like, Dylan McDermott's stepmother, I think it was, and also like is related to him somehow. So how'd that come to you? How did you get involved with that?
So that's actually part of a one-person show written by Anna Deavere Smith.
We love her.
Right.
Oh my God.
And it was called Let Me Down Easy, and she toured it all over the country where she played. It's incredible. It's like about 20 characters, I think, and it's about 100 pages, and they're just these lengthy monologues. God. So she toured it for a while all over the country. Eventually, she decided to finally give the rights to allow other people to do it. And so I was the first male to perform perform this. First person after Anna to perform it professionally, but also the first male.
Wow.
And that was kind of controversial because people were like, well, there's a lot of female roles in there, and what are you saying? But we did it, and it's a fantastic sort of piece on it's not necessarily on death, but it's about healthcare and about transitioning on to the next life that we live in. And you know, I had the opportunity to play all these characters, and I gotta say, it was exhausting because I was only given about 10 or 11 rehearsals to work these 100 pages, 20 characters, everything from like a rodeo riding, you know, cowboy who has, because a lot of these stories are about people who get injured or hurt, and then either they don't have the health insurance to cover it, you know, and how they went about doing that and what happened to them. There's people who've been, you know, cancer patients. You know, there's at one point I played Lance Armstrong too, you know, dealing with his thing as well, and just being able to like really get deep into the psychology of all of these characters and to play them one after another. And the show is set up in such a way that you're telling a full story within on the outer structure. Do you know what I mean? From person 1 all the way to person 20.
There's a story.
There's a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And each of them have their own stories as well. So it was exhausting, very, very tiring. But really something I needed to do at one point.
And character building.
Yeah, incredible character building, you know. And being able to like, all right, how do I play a woman without being like, look, I'm playing a woman. Do you know what I mean? Like without mocking it or minimizing it. So that was a really big challenge. And I had a great director, Bonnie Metzger, who's, you know, a force in the sense that she helped make sure I stayed in a place where I was respectful of everything that I was doing. So it never became about like clowning or mimicking something, you know.
And the reason why I show that piece also, some of the other stuff, is that you are having a diverse experience. That I want to show other brown people out there that it is possible to have a diverse career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and you certainly have to be committed to it, and you know, not give up. And sometimes it requires also going into avenues that aren't part of the norm. You know, like I think sometimes in Los Angeles, especially, people are so hell bent on like being on TV that they forget that there's so many other ways to create and be a part of something, and be an artist. You know, you don't have to. Constantly try to get on a network show. Yes, we would like that. Sure, you know, everyone wants that sort of life, I suppose. But it's important, again, I think, when you start, especially, to be an artist first. You know, and then you can be an actor or whatever it is, or you can define yourself that way. But be an artist and know what your art is and what you want to do, and that can shift and change all the time. You know, I can't remember who said this to me once, but it was a long, long time ago. But they said that, you know, we as human beings are porous people. You know, you can things come in, things come out. You know what I mean?
I like that.
And you should allow that to happen. So that's certainly how I've sort of tried to live my life, allowing myself to adjust. And you know, having lived in so many different countries and moving so much, you sort of have to be, you know, malleable in a way. And but yeah, that's I've been lucky that way.
You have been lucky. Now, I ask my guests the same 2 questions. I never prep them in advance, but every single guest who's been on the show has answered the same 2 questions, Usman. Okay, so be ready. Okay, I'm all about language, and so one of the things I want to ask you is, what is one word that we should not say anymore?
One word that we shouldn't say anymore?
Take it out of vocabulary. Take it out of vocabulary.
One word that we shouldn't say anymore. I would say, oh gosh, that's a tough question.
But you work for it. You come on the show, you make you work a little bit for it.
You are making me.
Because I just believe that language can hold us back. It can propel us forward. It can move us sideways. I mean, language is people say word's just a word, but in some ways it isn't. And what you say to yourself sometimes is equally as important as what you're hearing to move you forward or change your mood or.
I guess, you know, I think language is constantly evolving, and certainly it's important that we don't police it. I'm not saying you're policing it, but you know what I mean. But I suppose one word that's always like made me feel a bit uncomfortable is the word colored.
Me too. I mean? Me too.
Know, like not just, and I think people sometimes don't realize why, but it's the idea of colored. You know, like you are colored a particular way, and growing up in Southern Africa, it had completely different connotation too, because colored meant people who were half white and half black.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Mixed race and people were called colored too. So it's one that's always just sort of like made me feel
Good
icky,
answer.
you know. And especially when I was in the South in Florida and for grad school, you would hear it quite a lot.
Oh,
And I was
I'm
like,
sure.
They'd be like, well, you know, because you're, and these are like well-meaning liberal
Oh, yeah,
people,
of course.
but who'd say things like, well, you know, as a colored person, I'm like, well, okay, we need to,
Right.
you know. That being said, you know, I understand, again, that's part of a language of a certain region, and that's, you know, that's an evolving language in that part of the world. But, you know, in terms of like that's what they use right now, and maybe they won't, or maybe it's steeped in something that means something to them that doesn't mean something to me. I don't know, but that's been one that's...
I get things like, you know, like, I don't think of you as black.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Like, to me, it's like, then what do you think black is?
Yeah. Well, why
Then
are
what
you
is-
denying the fact that I'm
Right.
black, right?
I'm like, we should look at color. I don't care if you look at color as long as you don't discriminate against it.
You know what I hate is when people say, you know, I don't see color.
Right, I hate that too.
I'm like, then that what you're saying is that I'm invisible. It comes back to that whole point
Yes,
I made
it
about
does,
being the
doesn't it?
invisible minority. You know what I
never
mean?
thought that before.
I'm like, I'm not saying you should reject the fact that I'm different than you. I think you should accept the fact, embrace the fact that
Move on.
that we're different. We can celebrate the fact that I'm different, you know? But we don't have to, it doesn't have to be something that's completely like, oh, no, I don't see you that way. I see you just like me. I don't want to be seen just like you.
I never thought of that part of it.
I think we should keep our individuality in here, you know what I mean?
Completely.
But just, so.
I like that. Number two, the converse of that, what word do you think we should say more of?
I think we should say the word empathy more.
Oh,
been my
interesting.
big thing. I think people should say it, and I think people should practice it, you know, a bit more, especially in this day and age with the current administration that we live in.
Yes.
I think if you just say it sometimes, it'll remind you to be it. Do you know what I mean? To be empathetic.
I agree with that.
You know, so that's been my big one these days.
So before I can talk to you forever, Usman.
Oh, thank you. I could talk to you forever.
You are just, oh my God.
Hasn't this been fun?
You have to come back again.
Yeah, I will.
You have a million projects. Just come back again. So as we end this a little bit, I just want to know: are you thinking about going back to any theater soon? I know you're on TV. I know you're busy TV and you're filming TV.
I certainly hope so. I've had a couple of people who've been interested in a few different theaters around the country, and I'd really love to get involved with the right project.
Yeah.
And there've been some options. I'd love to. I have this dream of doing Macbeth.
Oh, wow.
And playing Macbeth. Now, this might be a pipe dream, but it's something that I...
Say it out loud. It's going to happen.
Yeah, you know, I'll put that out in the universe. So that would be great. But at the moment, we'll be shooting, you know, season 2 for most of this year. So it kind of puts me out of the game. And for some of next year as well for season 3.
He's working, folks. We're happy about that. He's working.
Yeah,
but I just want because you love theater.
I do, and it's something
I
I certainly want to go back to. I'd love to experience some good theater in LA. I mean, I've done some. I've worked at the Geffen and at the Falcon, which is a smaller theater. But I'd love to be able to get involved with something.
There's a lot of great here in LA. If you guys don't know, there's a lot of great 99-seat theaters in front, like the Greenway Arts. My friends do things over there, or Odyssey Theater. I mean, there's a lot of theaters here that are smaller that are actually putting on interesting. I try to see as many things I can see as I can. Interesting productions, from spoken word solo pieces to actual plays to musicals. I feel like they're trying a little bit here in LA.
Oh, sure, I think so. I mean, it's there. I know plenty of actors who are involved in the theater scene here, especially like the under 100-seat houses.
Yes, it's 99-seat theaters.
And that's right, 99 seats. And so they're doing it. I think sometimes there's just a lack of funding over here compared to places like Chicago. And there's not that much in theater in general, but over here it seems like it's really underfunded.
It's not as high on the priority list here because everything it's film and TV here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Where New York, Chicago, places where theater is probably even bigger than film and TV.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think so. Especially New York and Chicago, I think so. Even though film and TV does shoot there too. Atlanta right now, it's heavily movies and TV there too.
Yeah, I've never been. I've been to Atlanta as a visitor. I've never worked in Atlanta.
Oh, wow, yeah. Everybody, Tyler Perry right down there is working. They're working it out down there.
There's a lot of shows. In fact, in Vancouver, there's a lot of TV shows.
I know. I was in Vancouver. I do a show here called When Calls the Heart. It's the after show up there. And it's based on that. We were in Vancouver, and it's... Yeah, and Once Upon a Time's up there. There's a lot of shows in Vancouver. Yeah. It's a nice place. I love Vancouver.
Yeah, it's great. It's
so clean.
It is very, very clean.
Oh my gosh, the subway, like the subway, you have to be on the floor. Oh, it's crazy talking.
But wasn't it nice to be able to use a subway?
Yes.
Right.
I liked Vancouver a lot, actually. I stayed in the Richmond area. I had some good Chinese food, but I would take the subway in, and it was very nice. Yeah. They love their Tim Hortons up there, and they do. Isn't that funny?
I had met a Canadian on set here in LA who was like, "Did you go to Tim Hortons?" I'm like, "All right, I guess I really have to go to Tim Hortons." Yeah.
And if you go to Portland, go to Voodoo Donuts. But now they have Voodoo Donuts here at Universal City Walk. So I haven't been there yet to get my maple bacon donut. I'm gonna get. So this is Usman Ally. He's right now. You can see him in Series of Unfortunate Events on Netflix. You can see him on Veep coming coming up. He said probably a few weeks from now. It's going to come up. That's on HBO. And Nobody's is on TV Land. Now, tell me in that camera where they can find you on social media.
Oh yeah, so on Twitter Usman Ally @UsmanAly. Same thing for Instagram @Usman Ally, and then I'm also on Facebook, but I think it's like Usman Ally 1. I can't remember. You'll find me. Just search Usman Ally on Facebook. You'll find it. Yep.
Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It
My
was a great
pleasure.
time.
You guys, so Breaking Into is on Black Hollywood Live, and you can go to our Facebook page and go ahead and like it and see this episode and more information on him on that page. Go ahead and like it and say hi to me while you're there. Also, you can go to iTunes, and we're there actually under Breaking Into under Black Hollywood Live, and we're on YouTube too. So you can find us everywhere and see this episode or my 900 other ones I have on there. Go ahead and watch them and tell me what you think. Tell us what you think about the episode, think about him. I like to read your comments. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye. See ya.
From executives Kevin Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us @BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me @KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome back.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.